Hi, my name's Kelly. I'm a nutritional therapist and I'm going to speak to you today all about stress eating. So it's November. We're coming up to a time of year when people's stress levels notoriously rise. We've got Christmas around the corner, we've got increased social events, we've got different family dynamics to navigate, and emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, there's lots of calls on our time and our attention, which can inherently feel a little bit more stressful. And in those stressful times, something that we can find ourselves turning to is food. So I'm going to talk to you today all about how it impacts appetite, why stress eating does actually work to help you calm your stress levels down. I'm going to talk to you today about what doesn't help, and then I'm also going to give you something that hopefully will start to help you. So let's dive right in. First thing that I want to say is lots of people notice that they turn to stress eating and they berate themselves, they judge themselves, they criticize themselves, and they think that it's something that they inherently shouldn't do. Stress eating is a really common thing, and I think the first step in moving away from patterns of behavior that we don't like is awareness of how they're serving us to start with. And eating to resolve stress is something which inherently, although temporarily, does soothe us. And I think judging and berating ourselves for that is something that keeps us locked in a battle and keeps us stuck with it. So the first thing to acknowledge is that if you find yourself in a situation where you are consistently stress eating, is to acknowledge that right now that may be the best coping strategy that you have. Food may be the best coping strategy that you have. And if you can slightly start to shift yourself from criticism to curiosity and soften just that little bit, you may be able to understand the role of food, how it's serving you, eating in stressful circumstances, and nudge towards a different outcome. So let's dive right in. Firstly, let's talk about appetite in relation to stress. So appetite is impacted by different levels of stress. Now, people will experience this really differently. But most people, when they are super high level stressed, find that they lose their appetite. They find that they're not hungry, they can skip meals, and it really becomes a chore to remember to eat and actually to eat consistently. However, when we're experiencing lower levels of stress, perhaps normal daily stress, perhaps stress that's from work or things that are just ingrained and entwined in our life that we experience on a frequent basis, for many people that has the opposite effect, and they find that they can lean on food a little bit more and over consume food. So it's kind of like a seesaw. When we're super stressed, lots of people may find that actually their appetite disappears. But when we're dealing with low level consistent stress, but it's not too bad, but it is ongoing, you might find that actually you're more hungrier than usual. And when I'm talking about stress, I mean physical stress, mental stress, emotional stress, really any tension that we're struggling with. There's three key reasons that I want to discuss as to why it actually does help to eat when we're stressed, or what we're actually gaining from it. And you might resonate with one of these three reasons. One of the reasons that we turn to food when we're stressed is because it legitimately calms us down and temporarily provides us with a moment of relief. When we eat certain foods, we experience a dopamine hit, and even if it's temporarily, that feels good to us. And then that forms a neural pathway in our brain. So it forms like a habit that our brain remembers, well, last time I was stressed, I ate that thing and I felt temporarily better. So we seek more of that next time we're experiencing stress. So that's the first reason as to why it's really easy to turn to food when we're stressed. There's some research to support that lots of us benefit from the sensory aspect of food when we're stressed. There's lots of research to support the crunch of crisps or something really crunchy actually once again has a calming effect on us. And the third reason is lots of us experienced in childhood being soothed with food, being calmed down with food, perhaps going to our parents when we feel upset and them giving us food as a way of calming us down. So it's a really well-formed and ingrained habit that we soothe with food, and it's something we've learned from our formative years that's probably ingrained for a lot of us in our brains. So those are the three main reasons, and there's actually many more, but three that I just wanted to highlight. Firstly, food does calm us down. It gives us a dopamine hit. It temporarily relieves us from the tension. Secondly, there's a sensory aspect to food that can really help when we're feeling stressed. And thirdly, lots of us will learn to soothe through food via our childhood habits. There's three ways as to why it does actually work when we're stress eating. Now, when I say work, I mean work in a temporary way, and it absolutely can be one of our tools. We just don't want it to be our only tool. But there are things that we are doing that are likely not helping our stress eating, and I'm going to go into those now. So one of the first reasons is when we are dieting or we are trying to be good and we are in an internal battle around something that we really want to eat but we don't feel like it's aligned with our fat loss, we actually experience a lot of internal stress. We experience that kind of tug of war of should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I, and we go back and forward. And I often term this with my clients as mental gymnastics. We do a lot of mental gymnastics about whether we should or shouldn't eat the thing. And actually, internally, it causes us a lot of emotional stress. Now, if we do decide that we're going to eat the thing, temporarily, there's relief. There's release. We're no longer feeling stressed. We've made the decision, we've eaten the thing, we've experienced the dopamine hit, and we've got a release from that tension that we have been experiencing. Now, even though logically we may decide and say, you know what, this isn't something I want to keep doing, I've got a fat loss goal, this isn't helping, we've likely formed patterns in our brain to understand that when I'm stressed, this food helps. Although that might not be what we desire for ourselves, on a psychological level, we have learned that getting in a stress state, eating some food, soothes us. So it's a pattern that we can keep finding ourselves playing out time and time again. The second reason is people can be really hard on themselves and criticize themselves when they feel like they're in a pattern of stress eating. Instead of recognizing eating when we are stressed is actually a really effective tool in the moment. Instead of telling ourselves that we can never do it, we want to see it as a tool, but we want to expand our toolkit. I often talk to my clients about intention and energy. And if I go through this scenario, perhaps you can understand what I mean. So if I get in from work and I open up the snack drawer and I just eat, and I've had a super stressful day at work, I don't pay any attention to what I eat, and I'm just eating and eating and eating and eating. And when I stop, I think, oh my goodness, I didn't pay any attention then. I can't even tell you what I've just eaten. I was so stressed and that just took over. The energy of that probably feels chaotic, it probably feels frantic, and whilst it may have felt soothing and temporarily relieved me whilst I was in the moment of eating, pretty soon afterwards I probably don't feel so wonderful about myself. Now, when we intentionally use food as a stress reliever, that might look like this. I might get in from work and I might think, I've had a super stressful day. I really feel like this evening sitting down, eating a bar of chocolate, and I'm just going to enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy it slowly, I'm going to be mindful, I'm going to be present, and I'm going to allow myself to eat this bar of chocolate and I'm going to fully enjoy it. Now, the outcome may be the same. I may have eaten chocolate in both of those incidences, but the energy and the intention behind it can feel completely different. One can feel frantic and chaotic, and one can feel like I've not really made an intentional choice. And one can be me deciding I'm going to use food to help relieve my stress, and that's something that I've decided to do. Now, if you can be on that side of the fence where you are intentionally deciding, and the clients that I've helped get there notoriously are able to get there because food isn't the only way that they can soothe their stress. They have other tools in their toolkit, which means they aren't only relying on food, which means when they do rely on food, they can use it intentionally and mindfully and fully enjoy it. Another thing that I find really doesn't help in terms of stress eating is consistently letting ourselves get too hungry. Now, I've often witnessed this when people are trying to diet, they're trying to lose body fat, and they're really trying to be quote unquote good, and they are seeing food as less is best. They're really trying to get through the day, eating as little as possible, and if they make it and they succeed, they see that as a good day. But what perhaps we aren't considering is when we are super hungry, we are putting our body into a stressed state. Hunger is stress on the body. So we're then putting ourselves into a situation where we're very hungry, our body's in a stress state, and we're at a higher chance then of increasing our stress eating because of the thing that we're actually trying to avoid. So ideally, we want to recognise the signs of hunger that our body's given to us, and we can talk about that all day long, and perhaps I'll do a different podcast about that. But we want to recognise the signs of hunger that our body has given us so that we can eat something before we allow our body to get into a super stressed state physically. And the last one that I want to speak about is something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And these are the basic needs of a human being. You can see this here on this triangle. And if we don't meet these, once again, on an emotional level, on a physical level, on a spiritual level, on a level of connection, we as human beings won't be meeting our basic needs and we will be experiencing stress. Now, lots of people can really overlook how important these are on an ongoing basis. And it can be things like making sure we get enough sleep, making sure that we have connection in our life through friends, family, meaningful connections with people, making sure that we're sleeping well, that we're moving well, that we're hydrating well, that we're eating a variety of different foods, making sure that we feel like we have purpose in life. All of these things feed in to the level of stress in our stress bucket. And the more of these needs we're not meeting for ourselves or in connection or community with other people, the more of our basic needs are not being met, the more of a constant state of stress we will live in. Now, something that really helps us navigate stress eating, and I think there's two kinds of school of thought. There's a school of thought that when we're stressed and when we're stress eating, we just need to be able to get rid of the stress. And wouldn't that be a lovely world we lived in if we were just able to always get rid of stress? And then the other school of thought is that when we're stressed and we're stress eating, we just need better coping strategies to help with the stress. I actually think it's a combination of the two of these things. I think we need to focus and make sure that we're not consistently living in a super high stress state. And if we are, we definitely need to take action to reduce that. But I think we also need to develop and strengthen coping strategies so that when we are going through stressful times, as will happen in life, we do have more than just food as a coping strategy to help. Now, something that I've introduced recently to my clients, which I found super helpful both personally and professionally, is really embodying practices that help us get out of our head and into our body. Now, one practice that I've taken on recently that I've rolled out to my clients is emotional freedom technique. So tapping on certain points of the body, signaling safety to the body, saying different sentences to help calm us down, to work through things which really can keep us stuck emotionally. Another tool that can be really helpful is remembering the words feel, need, choose. FNC, super simple, can access it anywhere. When you are feeling in a stressed state, take a pause and ask yourself, what am I feeling? What do I need? And what am I choosing? That pause will give you enough mental space just to stop for a moment and ask yourself, okay, if I'm feeling stressed, what do I actually need right now? And based on what I need, what am I going to choose? And sometimes that may be food, but sometimes it may be I need to call a friend. I need an early night. I need to delegate something to someone. I need a better boundary somewhere. And slowly we'll start to expand the toolkit that we have so that it's not just food that we're using. But it all starts with the awareness of how we're relating to food, how we're using food to help us with stress, what we're gaining from using food when it helps us with stress in a non-critical, non-judgmental way, and then building out our toolkits so that we have more than just food to use in these stressful moments. So give it a try this week. Try and remember FNC, feel, need, choose. What are you feeling? What do you need? And what are you choosing? See you next week.